It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another video for a Walking Dead's comic book series. This is going to be my review for issue 175 of the Walking Dead's comic book, part 1 of 6 of the New World Order story arc. So we're basically getting into this new story arc with this issue, and even though the issue itself was a bit slow, I really enjoyed it. I thought that there was a lot of necessary build-up that needed to be there, and I definitely enjoyed it. And I feel like this issue was one of those issues where the dialogue was the highlight of the issue itself. Now, I loved the cliffhanger, but I'll get to that. But in terms of the actual start of the issue and, what basically moved towards that cliffhanger that we got, we basically picked up exactly where we left off last issue with the first, introduction of these new people, which are from the new community, from the Commonwealth community. So we have Magna, Michonne, Eugene, and Siddiq, and some of the others, basically surrounded by these group of men from this new community. Now, at that point, in the last issue, we didn't know whether these people were from the same community as Stephanie, who Eugene was communicating with, but that was basically verified in this issue as well. Now, the beginning stuff with Junita, it was okay. I thought that it was a bit goofy. We don't know too much about her character, and, this might be part of her character and, the things she likes to say, but she did come off a bit too goofy, in my opinion, mainly because if there's like that many people pointing guns at you, you wouldn't be making jokes like that. But one thing that I absolutely thought was pretty funny, it cracked me up, was, Junita was talking about the armors and how they had flaps over their ding-dongs, as she called it. And then there's a point where one of the guards tells the other, "Is this bitch for real?" I just cracked up there. That was pretty funny, hilarious. I love that. But then we have Eugene stepping up, talking about Stephanie and not trusting this group and everything. I thought that it was great for Eugene to step up. I absolutely loved it. I'm excited to see where this takes Eugene's character going forward. But they basically agreed to take our group to meet the person in charge of basically monitoring who's getting into this community. And once they're there, we basically get to meet this new character, Lance, who, like I said, is in charge of monitoring these new groups of people that are coming to their community and making sure they're not bad people. Now, I absolutely loved the dialogue between Lance and the others. First, Lance comes off as very nonchalant, but at the same time, he threatens them when he needs to threaten them, and I think it's an effective way of doing it. I didn't get a vibe that, he was necessarily a bad person, but at the same time, the threats he gave, it felt like it was a real threat. It didn't feel like it was empty. But it remains to be seen whether his threats are actually just empty threats or if he's going to follow up with any of his threats. Right now, I absolutely love him. I think his name is Lance Hornsby or something. I absolutely love his introduction. I feel like he is definitely an interesting character. It's going to be interesting to see where they take his character going forward. But again, loved Eugene stepping up, talking to Lance, and basically putting on this leadership type of stance in front of Lance. I absolutely loved it. And I love that Michonne and the others are saying that he speaks for all of us. So I thought that was perfect. This kind of goes back and forth, this dialogue between them, with Lance kind of threatening them a bit, but at the same time telling them that he's not a bad guy and trying to gain their trust a little bit. But at the same time, we have that kind of pushback from Eugene and the others. But I love that going back and forth. I think that a lot of the dialogue is very interesting and important in what we're going to see later on. Mainly because it basically introduces us to what type of characters these people are. And, what community they're from. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I think that was important, and I think it was done effectively in this issue. But then one of the main reveals that we get is just how big this community is. Lance says that they have approximately 50,000 people at the community, which is mind-blowing because obviously none of the communities we've seen come anywhere close to what this community has at this moment, if they're telling the truth, which it definitely seems like they are. But I think that just shows how much bigger this world is going to get. And it opens up a lot of interesting topics and a lot of interesting storylines regarding where we go from here. And what the future looks like. It's not just about the saviors and the hilltop and the kingdom. It's about a bigger world. It's about essentially a new town. Because 50,000 people, that's even bigger than a town. That's like a small city, I would say. So that's an interesting kind of storyline that we're getting. And, it's going to be very interesting to see what this community is all about and what their intentions are. But at the same time, who the people that are in this community are. I'm sure that within this 50,000 people, there's going to be good people. There's going to be bad people. There's going to be people that just want to live. They don't want to have anything to do with, the outside world and everything like that. So that actually raises a lot of questions regarding the kind of parallel scenario where we have this community that essentially acts like a government. And we have these group of people inside that we're going to get to meet that are going to tell us a lot about what kind of society they live in. So I absolutely love this kind of introduction, and I absolutely love how they're changing the story a little bit and making it bigger, even bigger than what we've seen so far. So that's very exciting, very interesting. But one other thing that was very interesting was that they have a stadium that they use for concerts and football and baseball and basketball. That just goes to show how big this community is. So I thought that was a good touch on there as well, to show just how big this community is. Now, the other thing that I want to touch base on is the realism aspect. I think that this is good in terms of making it real and bringing back that realistic aspect of it, because obviously there had to have been a community as big as what we see now with the Commonwealth. There had to be. There's going to be a lot of new communities, a lot of new camps and everything. But, after all of that time, there had to be enough people forming together to be able to build this kind of structure that we see from the Commonwealth. Now, the intentions of the Commonwealth remain to be seen. We don't know if they're good, if they're bad. It seems like they're most likely reasonable. They could be bad, but at the same time, they're very reasonable right now, the way we see it. And Lance and the others don't come off as a villain. But at the same time, we're still going to have to wait and see what happens. But then going from there, they agree to basically follow Lance and the others to meet the person in charge. And I think there's something very subtle but interesting in there, because Lance said, okay, fine, we're going to go to where we need to go and Stephanie's going to be there, or something along those lines. And that raises some questions. Is Stephanie the leader or not? Because if she is, it could be very interesting. It's a bit unrealistic, I would say. What are the chances that the person in charge in this 50,000 population community is the one that communicates with Eugene? So a bit out there, but it's going to be interesting to see whether Stephanie is related to the leader or whether Stephanie is going to just be there. But that's going to be interesting to see. But they basically all kind of go towards where the Commonwealth is, which is very cool. I love, them on the road and everything. The dialogue, the small, brief dialogue between some of the guards or soldiers and Michonne and the others. I thought that was a pretty cool touch as well. But we have like a bunch of walkers attacking. They're basically surrounded, and we see how systematic the soldiers are. They kill all the walkers or most of the walkers and, systematically take care of it. I'm pretty sure that this would have been more difficult for the group to take care of. But, these soldiers, there's something systematic about them, which I love, which is going to be interesting to dive more into. But Lance and some other soldiers basically leave the other soldiers to clear the area. Michonne and the other people follow them. And they basically get to somewhere that's very close to where the actual Commonwealth community is. And then Lance basically points out that there's this board of missing people, where there's pictures of people that are missing, that are looking for their loved ones and everything like that. which I thought was absolutely cool. I didn't see something like that coming, but I think it adds two pretty interesting components to the story. The first is that it makes it real. You know, in a real world setting where this kind of thing happens, we would see something like this where there's a board of missing people. It makes the people within the community more relatable. Some of the people living in that community are looking for their loved ones. That adds a realistic aspect, but at the same time, we're relating to the people that are in there. But the other thing is that it makes it more emotional. It adds to the emotional level because there's obviously that part where they don't know if their loved ones are dead or alive, which is very interesting and a part that kind of makes it more human, makes the story more human, which I love. But then we get to the ending of this issue, which is the cliffhanger, which I absolutely love. I thought this was amazingly done. It was placed at the perfect moment. It was basically done at the perfect time. We have Eugene noticing one of the images on the board and points it out to Michonne. And Michonne looks at it and it says, "Have you seen my mom, Michonne? If you have information, please contact Elodie at the bakery on 6th Street." So this is a big reveal. So Michonne's daughter is one of the people living in this community. So that makes this new community that much more interesting. So we have this kind of connection to the community now. It's not just a community that's unknown. We know someone from this community. And Michonne, who we know and love, knows her, is her mother. So there's that kind of close connection that's created now, which I absolutely love. And it kind of gives us more confidence that these are good people. But the other thing I want to touch on is that it says 6th Street. So this community is large enough, which it has to be with 50,000 people, to have streets, which is very interesting because it definitely gives us this vibe that this community is big enough for people to actually need some kind of address to locate some area or some house or some location. At Alexandria Kingdom Hilltop, we don't have to worry about that. It's not that big. You can just go up and down and find it in like a couple minutes. But in this big community, you would need some sort of address in order to find someone. So that also kind of gives us some vibes of the old world, of pre-apocalyptic world, which I absolutely love. And it's going to be interesting to see if we're going to see a scenario where, you know, Michonne is kind of asking around, trying to find this address to look for her daughter, which is very cool because it basically makes it feel like this is not a post-apocalyptic world anymore, which kind of does raise some questions where the story is heading and how big is it going to get and how different it's going to get. But at the same time, it's going to make it feel unique and interesting, which I absolutely like. But this cliffhanger, I absolutely love it. And it basically ends with Michonne with tears in her eyes, which is very cool. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what happens with Michonne. Will she find her daughter? And will this community basically accept these people as new members of their community? And what's Rick and the others going to do? Are they going to move here? Obviously, it's going to be better to live here than where they are. It's much bigger. There's probably more resources. Life is way better. Standard of living is way better. So that part of the story is also very interesting. But also, what's Michonne going to do? Is she going to take her daughter, if she finds her, back to Alexandria? Or is she going to stay there? But all of these things make me very excited and interested in the story. I had some doubts about this new community and, you know, the way they were dressed and everything. But, you know, I could put that aside and give it the benefit of the doubt now because I love where the story is heading. I absolutely love it. But that's basically it for my review. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.